Hello, hello. It's Orit Krug here, and welcome back to Mind Your Body. Today, we have an amazing, unique episode where I interview a therapist and her client together. Really not traditional. And if you've got some feelings about that, that's all right. We actually get into it. We get into talking about how they can even be here together and what has come up for them through that. And we talk about it all. So Anna and Jennifer, which are pseudonyms, by the way. Jennifer is the therapist who has helped Anna really go through her sexual trauma recovery. And that has been so transformational for Anna that she wrote a book about it called In Me We Trust. And we are publishing this podcast in April on purpose. It's Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. And because of that, Anna is offering a promotion on her book to reflect the 1 in 6 women who report being a victim of rape or attempted rape in their lifetime in the United States. So the discount on her book is it's 17% discount to reflect the 1 in 6. And I'm going to put that promo code and the link in the podcast episode notes below, because after listening to this episode, you are going to want more. You're going to want to hear more of this story. It is amazing to witness and hear Anna being supported by Jennifer through her transformation from sexual trauma to life after, where she can be in this amazing, powerful place, writing a book about it and telling her story here today. So, without further ado, let's get into it. This is Mind Your Body, a dance movement therapy perspective on the integration of our emotional, cognitive, physical, and spiritual aspects of our being into one more aware and whole existence. So today we have Jennifer Lazar and Anna Gulden on Mind Your Body. And I want to say welcome and thank you for being here. And let them tell you a little bit about themselves and why they're here together, because it's really exciting. This is going to be a great episode. So Jennifer and Anna, would you give a little introduction about yourselves?
Yes, thank you. My name is Anna Gulden, and we are here today to talk about a book I recently published called In Me We Trust, A Discovery of Self After Sexual Trauma. It's a memoir that I wrote about my experiences with recovery from PTSD after being raped by a friend. And I just want to point out that Anna is a pseudonym, and so is Jennifer, and that is intended to protect the identity mainly of my family, who are included in the book, and also my foes, because the point of the book is not about calling out perpetrators. Rather, it's about showcasing and highlighting that recovery is possible. And I hope through the course of this interview today, and then also for people who read the book and check annagulden.com's website and look at the resources, that it might be a tool for other people to see how healing can happen. And so that's the primary reason that I'm here today. I also just want to point out my background is in mental health. I've been in the mental health field for 21 years. I have a PhD in a mental health field, and I'm a licensed practitioner. I'm not going to say the specific area in mental health to protect anonymity, but I do have a background in our field.
Awesome.
So hi, I'm Jennifer Lazar, and I'm a board-certified dance movement therapist, and I also have a PhD in clinical psychology. I had my first internship in dance movement therapy about 45 years ago. It might be longer than that, actually. It's hard to keep, but the years have gone by so quickly. But it's been quite some time that I've been a therapist, and that was one of the reasons Anna came to me, because she was interested in doing a body-based kind of therapy. And I have worked mostly in facilities, mental health facilities in my working life. I have specific specialties that I focus on. And I came to having the main focus of my work be my private practice a couple of years ago, which has been very exciting. It's been wonderful because I worked so much with people who were in critical states, and having severe symptoms in terms of their clinical diagnoses. And now I get to work with people and watch their recovery happen and watch their progress and watch them feeling better. And being part of that process has been really exciting and wonderful. Not that I didn't love the work that I did previously, but this has been amazing. And it's why I'm able to come and talk today about what's happening with Anna and this amazing book that she wrote.
Awesome. Thank you. So just a little bit of history before we really get into more of your work together. Can you share with us how long you've been working together, how often you've been meeting, and just kind of the specifics of the logistics?
Mm-hmm. So I, like Jennifer said, was really interested in doing some body-based work because up to that point, my rape occurred in 2002. And I met Jennifer in 2014. And I had done some therapeutic work up to that point, but really inconsistently and not specific to trauma recovery. And so I looked for, when I went to a mental health retreat, 10-day intensive retreat. I was in a critical state in July of 2014. And at the end of that, we had to put together a healing plan. And what I indicated in my healing plan was that I wanted to find a therapist that was somehow connected to something somatic. And, to be honest with you, I don't even think I knew dance movement therapy was a thing, but I just went home and Googled, and found the American Dance Movement Association, ADTA.
The American Dance Therapy Association.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
And on there, find a therapist, and searched through a lot because I think I could only at that time search by California, and and they were not alphabetized, and I couldn't figure out how to sort it, and it was actually a little bit of a challenge, but I found 2 that were in my area.
Nice. Yeah. And most people, like most of my clients, they're like, what? I haven't heard of dance therapy before you. So
yeah,
that's pretty common. So you met
Jennifer. Yeah. So Jennifer's the one who called me back. And,
first step.
yes. And that's when we started meeting.
And that was 4.5 years ago?
Yes. That was in September 2014.
And how often were you meeting?
Weekly.
Okay.
For 1 to 2 hour sessions on Sundays.
Okay. And for all the 4.5 years, or did you also change it up a little bit?
There's been periods of time that it was maybe down to 1 time a month, but never less than that, except for when I gave birth.
Right. That's right.
I think when I gave birth, we were in touch more just via phone or text message check-ins, but not actual sessions. I think it was about 3 months that we were not meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So when we were talking before we hit the record button, we were talking about how, Anna, you talk in your book about having an egalitarian approach within the therapeutic relationship. Can you talk more about what you mean by that and what that looks like?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I have a background in the mental health field. And for me, when I work with clients, I believe that a therapeutic alliance rooted in egalitarianism means that we are on an equal playing field, that I may have additional training and additional knowledge to bring to a perspective on what the client may be going through, but that it's ultimately up to the client to direct and guide and be the expert in the client's life. And so when I am the client, I also look for a therapeutic alliance and a therapist that is going to approach the building of the therapeutic alliance from that perspective. We didn't actually name it that until we were putting together the 3 points for this podcast. Like, we've never actually talked about that before, using the word egalitarian. Mm-hmm. But it's, for me, something I look for. I don't do well with experty, authority-ish figures, but I do well with people who are confident and assertive in their knowledge and open to me saying, no, I'm not ready to do that right now. And that's what Jennifer has been able to do.
Well, and it's really exciting for me to hear that, because I don't present myself as an egalitarian therapist. I mean, that's my intention. But I actually, when we were talking about this beforehand, I was saying that for me, I would say a healthy dose of humility about that. Just like in social justice issues, I'm not going to assume that the person I'm speaking to finds me to be egalitarian. I'm going to always be checking in about that. Is this working for you? And if not, please tell me. And, just there's always an awareness that this could go off balance easily, that I can be in the seat of authority, quote unquote, and in a power position, that I just have a healthy dose of respect for that, and how that can take the relationship off kilter and not be particularly therapeutic. So that's my intention. I just never want to assume that I'm being egalitarian. I'm going to leave that up to my client to give me that feedback. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, does that make sense to you, mm-hmm. Anna? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Do you have any examples of like a moment in your session where that has shown up?
Yes. And I'll just kind of bring this back to the book, because there's several examples in the book. Because it chronicles my recovery, many chapters are set in Jennifer's office. And readers will see in as they read the book how skilled Jennifer was at checking in with me along the way. So one example, the first time we did movement, or one of the first times she invited me to do, well, actually, I'll even start in our first session. We talked, she asked at the end, do I have any questions? Or maybe it was at the beginning, and I said, well, how does movement happen? Because I knew I wanted to do it, but I was really shy, very self-conscious, very uncertain. As someone who was a victim of a rape that occurred while I was asleep, it was a surprise. It was being caught off guard is not a position that I like to be in. And so I checked in with Jennifer about that, and she was from the get-go like, I'll present some opportunities, or I'll, share with you, we could do movement. This is what it would look like. And you will always have the say, yes, I want to do it, or no, I don't, or maybe if we modified it, or, so she asked me if I wanted to take a walk with her and Pansy in 1 2-hour session we were doing.
Pansy's my dog.
Yes, Pansy's the dog. And so after the first hour, we had to take Pansy out. She had to take Pansy out. And so, did I want to get up from a comfy pillow fort we had made on the floor and go for a walk or not? And I honestly deliberated, like, I don't really want to do that. But then I also kind of do, because I didn't want to be here by myself, blah, blah, blah. And it ended up being amazing, because we saw this awesome tree that was kind of a barren tree, and it was emerging out of the fog. And like a couple sessions prior, I had some visual imagery when we were doing another very slight movement of that barren tree living in my left hip bone. And so it was so powerful. And we then went and did some she invited me to do some movement around the tree and just listen to the sensations that I was having in my body as I was walking around this tree that was a perfect replica of what I saw living in my hip.
May I give a shout out for
Yeah.
just a second? This is a little sidebar.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to one of my mentors, the amazing, great Anna Gulden, who has so much respect for everyone's process individually and for people's imagery. And the fact that there is a tree in your left hip bone, that you could be so specific about that, Anna, that's like gold for someone who is a dance movement therapist who works with the body and who works with imagery. Combining that with IFS work, internal family systems work, I just want to give a shout out to her because she's so egalitarian in her approach, and there's so much respect for the person who's in front of her and their body and their imagery and how it comes up. And so for me, that was just such a beautiful moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So please go ahead.
Well, and then I would also want to, thank you for that.
Yes.
I also want to give an example of a time that I was like, no, not today. Jennifer, usually my no, not todays are around expressing anger because it's not something that comes natural to me. And so it was recent, actually. It was a more recent session. Do you want to do some movement around expressing anger? And I was like, no, I just don't have it in me today. I don't want to do it today. And I was like, okay, then let's move on and do something else. And then the next session, we actually did the movement.
That's right.
And it was very cool.
Yeah. I'm going to do a little footnote here. What you just said about that anger doesn't come naturally to me. That's a huge marker for me that there's a part of Anna that tells her that anger doesn't come naturally, but that it's one of the most natural impulses we have as human beings, and that I'm going to hold that I know that when Anna is able to be grounded in self, capital S self, that the anger that's, justified anger, not like to be angry all the time, but that the justified anger that's been inside of her, that she'll be able to connect with that and feel safe doing that. And be able to connect with that in her body and regulate herself and have the confidence in herself that she can be angry and it's okay.
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about what I just said?
Yeah. No, I think you're right on target there. It's just making me think about the very incredible experience of having working with Jennifer, who's both skilled and are trained in DMT, but also in internal family systems, and how integrating those two in such a skillful way, I think, has been a real primary tool or technique. I don't even know the word, but in my healing, having both of those working together has been huge.
Can you talk more about that? Like, what is that? I mean, maybe we can break it down just a little bit more too about first DMT. So, Anna, you were talking about wanting this body-based therapy. Not sure if you said you had tried other things like talk therapy before that. But like, what was your experience in bringing it to the body? Like, what change did that make for you after all these years of living with your trauma in your body and then finally being able to approach it from that sense?
Well, that is a great question. So in the past, this is also outlined or written about in the book, but so I'd done EMDR, which was all these were very helpful, and I was ready for them at the time that I initiated doing them, if that makes sense. So EMDR, I did dream work, talk therapy, like self-defense classes, yoga, things that were not necessarily traditional, but never had I realized until I was on that mental health retreat how crucial getting my body involved in the expression of the trauma, how crucial that was going to be to my recovery. And fortunately, on that retreat, I was invited to, or they not invited, but all of us that were there was a great art room. And so we would have these kind of meditations, reflections, small groups. And then there was this like big thing that punched and kicked and threw things. And it was like this huge cathartic relief. And then I had, I felt like I had poison in my body. And so I took a bucket and put all this gross stuff in it. And like other clients that were there, like spit in it. And like, it was just, and I stirred it up. And it was just like, it was like this poison that I was like expelling from my body. And I didn't expel it actually at that time, but it was the first time I had externalized any of that, what I now know is, the shame and the trauma that was dumped in me. Mm-hmm. And because of the power of that, and then being able to go into an art room and do sculpting or drawing or whatever around that movement, I knew that I wanted to come back and find someone that could do that work with me. And I knew then that, I had done enough research in my professional life to understand the like neuroplasticity and, understand the brain body connection. And so I was just really at that point, I was ready to not live with the pain anymore. And I had, right before the mental health retreat, been in a suicide crisis for 10 days. So the closest I'd ever come to hitting, submit to buy pills. And I had a time frame. It was going to be a couple days from then. And so I just was done living with the pain, because I just, when I was in self, which at that time was rare, I knew that I wanted to live.
Yeah.
That's why I looked for a dance movement therapist.
Can I highlight one of the things you just said?
Sure.
Anna, that I'm so moved listening to you describe what it's been like for you. It's so beautiful. The level of consciousness you bring. I really want to. That's what I want to highlight. The level of consciousness that Anna brings to the work has made it so rich, and I think that's one of the reasons you wrote the book, because you wanted people to go into it with, you have the benefit of having this education, and you had this a beautiful impulse to make sure that other people go into this with that kind of knowledge, with that kind of education as best they can as they're finding their path to recovery. There was something in particular that you said that I wanted to highlight about your education. Oh, that we've talked the whole time. Anna bought the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And I had seen it before, but I didn't have it in my office. And the way she benefited from that book, I hopped on, and I have that book in my office. I have it in Unspoken Voice by Peter Levine in my office. I have books handy for my clients. This is one of the ways Anna's been so inspiring, for them to be able to read about what's actually happening in their body as the trauma moves through and as we're moving together. And so we can talk about that. So when she might say something about, feeling electricity in a certain place, and she might feel this thing in her brain, and she might feel this thing on her right side or in her hip, that we can actually talk about what's going on, that we're adding this cognitive element to it that helps, that is so empowering to a client who's recovering from trauma, that they understand that all of those sensations are significant, and that it means that there's progress, because it can be scary, right? It can be like, what was that? And what am I feeling right now? So if we can actually name that together, and celebrate that, and celebrate how intelligent the body is and how intelligent the brain is in terms of the processing, and that we're having this, there's this exquisite experience of release and of the neurology being able to shift. Like you just talked about neuroplasticity, that's what we're doing that together. And so then Anna can track that in her body, and that's part of the healing. This is, we're so beholden to the folks who did all of so much research, the brain research, and we're able to start connecting the dots, so then people can do that for themselves. They can connect the dots and understand how this body that might feel like they've been betrayed by their body, and they're holding the shame in their body, that the body to reconnect with the body in this empowered way, to reclaim the body, to reclaim sensation, to reclaim, being able to live in this body and live a life of beauty, and to have the bodily sensations and the pleasures, to have all of that come back again, is such an amazing experience. And the work that we've done together, I've just felt at so many moments has been just like there have been so many breakthroughs that have taught me so much about how to work with other people. So her writing this book is such a gift, to offer this to other people, to say, this is what was happening to me, and you can find your own path through this, but these are the things that work for me, and this is why, and this is what you can be conscious of.
Amazing. Yeah. And something you said before, Anna, about what you've done, one of the things you said was yoga, right? And I feel like this is an important point to bring up, because it is clear from the way that you are talking together and about each other and about your work together that the relationship is and has been so important in your recovery. And sometimes I see that people will try to substitute the real therapeutic relationship where you can do this real deep work. I mean, I believe that trauma needs to be healed within relationship. But that I've seen that some people try to do it through, let's say, a yoga classes. What was the difference with that for you? Because both engage in your body, but they're obviously very different.
Yeah. I will say that when I was doing the last time that I actively engaged in yoga prior to my work with Jennifer, the teacher had us go lay on your back and put your legs up, against the wall. And I broke down in tears. It was such a vulnerable position. At the time, I had no idea. I had to get up and leave. I was mortified. I felt so embarrassed and ashamed that I was crying, and I didn't understand why I was crying. And it was just this very humiliating experience. Had I had someone like Jennifer or another, trained professional in trauma that I could talk to and process about that experience, it could have been so empowering and powerful. So I think maybe I think yoga has a huge potential to be very healing when it's coupled with someone who's really trained in how to process trauma. Yeah. And I want to also say that now, since I've been working with Jennifer, the other really key element that I brought in regularly was massage therapy, and the importance of working with a massage therapist that is also knowledgeable and understanding of trauma. And what Jennifer was saying before about connecting with the different systems of the body, the muscles, the skeletons, skeletal system, the cranial sacral. So I was so fortunate, and readers will meet my massage therapist in the book. Her name is Fora Crane, and she was an absolute miracle worker as well. And so I think that to really recover from trauma, it takes an integrated approach with different therapeutic techniques. Dance movement, it's not a technique, but interventions. Is it okay? Like, so dance movement therapy, IFS, the artistic, like drawing, creative expression, journaling. But I've also, integrated very intentionally massage therapy, meditation, medication, and it's all of those together, and then building the capacity of my support system to be champions of my recovery. All of that together is what has made it possible.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. And something I preach about is like, feeling like you've been doing it on your own for so long. Because there are a lot of people out there who they really want to feel better. And there's a lot of books, there's a lot of different things that you can do on your own. And like I've gotten a lot of, because I make a lot of content about that, like people will message me and say, yeah, I've tried so much on my own and I feel like a failure. Like I feel like I'm never going to recover. It creates this hopelessness feeling, this powerlessness feeling, which is really a mirror of how they have felt in their trauma as well.
Yeah.
And
I felt that for the many years before I met Jennifer and really engaged Jennifer, Flora, medicate, all of those things together.
Yeah.
With light sidebar, because I want people to understand that the yoga that we're talking about is specifically hatha yoga, the physical postures. And I want people to be really, really careful about how they choose, because there's a lot of misappropriation right now, just in terms of just being really culturally sensitive. There are people who are doing, I don't know. I don't even know what they're doing anymore. They're just making up different kinds of yoga to make money. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. And I want to make sure that if people have trauma, that they go to somebody who really understands what hatha yoga is about, and that what can come up for somebody when they're in class, and that it's done in a really careful, conscious way. Okay, like doing hot yoga is probably not good for somebody who has trauma. It might be, I can't say specifically, but I would say to be really careful about choosing a class and choosing a teacher the way Anna has been.
And also, a class isn't therapy. Like going to a yoga class,
Yes.
I don't believe that's egalitarian in essence. Like it's not in this relationship. It's not a therapeutic relationship. It's teacher and students. It's so different. And I think that's why I brought it up, because it's not yoga. What you're talking about is not yoga. It can be helpful when you already have the foundation of your beautiful relationship together, of the amazing things you've worked on. But to use that as a substitute, or because it's, cheaper than therapy, for example, it's just, it's not the same at all.
It can be almost dangerous. Damaging. Not that yoga is dangerous. It's not. I'm a practitioner myself. It's just using that as a substitute. You're just setting yourself up for trouble.
Yeah.
And we're also picking on yoga right now, but it's like, it's any class, where like I die a little bit inside when some people are like, oh, I'll just take a dance class. I'm not going to do the therapy.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, that's such a misunderstanding.
Yeah. So in terms of going into your body and really accessing this trauma, expressing this trauma through the body, how were you able to stay safe? Like, how did you feel? What parts of your relationship made it feel safe and helped you really expand your window of tolerance in basically confronting these feelings that have been inside of you for a long time?
Another really good question.
Great question.
So the first thing that came up as I was listening to you ask the question is how slow we went. One of the, very first movements we did, I was expecting to be like, dancing to my favorite hip hop song or something that, or maybe not hip hop, but maybe one of those emo songs that I still love to this day, but I would play on repeat when I was down in the dumps or whatever, So I was expecting that. And then there was actually a moment, I've never told you this, and this is not in the book either. This is a sidebar that there was a moment where I was like, man, I just want to bring my favorite songs in and dance with her. And I don't know why we should do that in the future. But anyway, she asked if I wanted to do some movement. This is maybe our first or second session. And I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And she's like, okay. And she went and got pillows and blankets and, and invited me to like lay in them. And she's, then asked like, what else do you need to feel like nurtured? What other parts of your body need a pillow? And I remember laying there, and this is in the book, being like, wow, this is a new concept. Like, what do I need? And like, what is my, my heels a little bit on the ground? And, I feel a little bit chilly. Do I ask for another blanket? Do I not? Like the internal kind of process. But because it was, she was introducing me to my body in a very slow, sort of safe way that I think that laid the foundation for kind of, like you said, expanding that tolerance for facing the pain and suffering that comes with trauma. And then, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but I would say that the other really crucial piece is the introduction of internal family systems, because that theory or system of psychotherapy gave me a very strong understanding of all of the different internal parts and voices and pieces and things that, barren trees that were living in my body, and how to make sense of it all. And I mean, I think that is DMT and IFS are like the most incredible therapeutic processes that I've come across in the years that I've been in the field. And I read, I don't see it up here, Jennifer showed me the Internal Family Systems introductory book.
Yeah. An introduction to family systems.
Yeah.
By
and
Richard Schwartz.
It's, I'll just plug again, AnnaGulden.com lists a lot of these resources that we're talking about, links, the associations, this book, The Body Keeps the Score book. But anyway, I read that book almost, I would say probably in 2 days. I mean, it's a very simple read. You don't have to have a background in mental health to understand this introduction to the internal family systems model by Dr. Richard Schwartz. And so that helped me then feel, because I had a place to orient all of these different scary things that were coming up inside me. And then I had also an understanding of, once we get to know these parts and these scary things and these strong emotions and these off the wall behaviors that sometimes I would have, it helped me to feel like, okay, I can tackle this. And Cartman's triangle. Yeah. If you want to talk about that one too.
Can I backtrack a tiny bit?
I just threw
you said so many great things. I hope I read them out. I should have written them down as you were talking. So, but just one of the wonderful things about dance movement therapy and internal family systems work, for me, the intersection is that there's this beautiful, the way I was trained, emphasis on the most important thing is being in capital S self. That the most important thing is bringing the person that you're working with, having the confidence, which boys in IFS emphatic about this as a therapist, that you have the confidence that the person you're working with has a capital S self that they've lost access to, and that you're holding that, and that's the goal, is to be in self. And that's one of the things I always loved about dance movement therapy so much, is that it's to understand your body, your sensations, your truth for your body, that your body is going to give you so much information all of the time. What feels good to me? What doesn't feel good to me? What feels to me? What do I like? What do I not like? And all of that information is in our bodies. And when you experience trauma, you get so cut off from that because you're so flooded with what the perpetrator has dumped on you, and it's so hard to stay in one's identity and to feel that to not feel broken and defective. So it's to regain access to self again. We did that through that slow process of coming back into the body and being really kind and gentle, and just treating the body like putting a baby. I often use the image of putting a baby in a cradle, that you're going to be so gentle with yourself and with your body that's been through so much. The tendency, it can feel counterintuitive for someone who's been through trauma, because there can be this feeling of, I hate my body and I want to punish my body, and I don't want to be in my body, or I want to ignore my body, or I want to numb out. And so what we're doing is, I call that process thawing, that all the systems are going to have to come back on again, and that we're going to be really careful about noticing that when everything's coming back on again, and being able to, so for Anna to be able to monitor that for herself, to be able to look at her musculoskeletal system and feel it coming on, and her central nervous system, her digestive system, her, all of the systems that get shocked by the traumatic event or events. Actually, in your case, it was events, uncovering, is there more trauma that is stored in the body and in the brain, and just being so kind and so slow. And one thing that's really interesting is that we used to tell people to take deep breaths when they were dissociating, having flashbacks or panic attacks. And we don't do that anymore. It does not help. And we didn't listen for a long time. We would say, no, it's going to help you if you take a deep breath. So that's part of the experience as well. It's like, no, just be aware of your breath. Be really slow and just notice what's happening with your breath. Is it shallow? Is it fast? What's happening with your breath, and just following it. And then the person themselves will be able to regulate. They'll be able to do that for themselves. I don't have to tell them how to breathe.
Yeah.
We can talk about it, and if there are issues with it, we can talk about it. But giving them the confidence, because everybody knows how to breathe, because that's been damaged in the the impact of the trauma. So no, let's come back to your deepest knowledge. Your body knows how to breathe, so we're gonna get there again at your pace.
Yeah. And you both said the word slow. I think that's so important, because being in the pain, or even being in that numbed out place, can feel so horrible. You just want to speed it up and get past it already. And that is, I was actually just talking to a client today about actually, she knows this, and she continues to come back to this in her body, that the answer is to go slow when she wants to really rush through the process.
And who wouldn't, right? Who wouldn't want to? Of course. It would be so painful. So, that's why it's so important to have a therapist to so sit in that together. Yeah, this is horrible, and it's unfair, and it's unjust that you have to go through this. And I wish this could be fast. And just I often use the term grunt work, that doing the grunt work is what's going to make this really solid and last. And doing the grunt work makes it so important, and so it solidifies it.
So I think a couple things that I want to add here in terms of my work outside of the sessions with Jennifer. I was really hesitant and reluctant and resistant to doing work outside of the session when I first started, in part because I was in a new job, and there was just a lot going on in my life outside of. So it was like, okay, I knew on Sundays I had a place to go do this, and then I could leave and, carry on with the other things that were going on. Once I started really engaging in the between session activities, I think the slowness sped up a little bit. It still didn't get fast, and I'm totally one of those that I don't want to again, this is a story in the book too. I'm not giving away the whole book. but just this idea of like walking through a labyrinth and like, I just can't stand doing those. Like, I just want to like hopscotch over the lines to the middle, I like straight direct in, not in a circle. But things that I did, like sleep with a rose quartz rock, or, just some other symbolists items that had meaning and symbolism to me. Engaging in the meditation, being really intentional about talking with my massage therapist about what sort of body energy work was going on in therapy, and how we could integrate, how she could then play a specific role in the therapeutic healing of the trauma. So like that is also important as a client's perspective, in terms of wanting, how do you speed up the process, I think, but it's still 4.5 years and I'm still in it.
Yeah.
But then the other thing that I wanted to highlight is gone from my brain.
Well, yeah, no, I was emphatic about that in the foreword as well, but it's like fighting a war. Doing the trauma work is so hard, and I predict that. I tell my clients ahead of time, this is not going to be easy. This is really hard work, and there are going to be times when you might want to kill me, but I'm going to stay here and I'm going to hang in with you, and it's worth it. It's just worth it. And I think that's one of the reasons it's great to read your book as well, Anna, for people to know that you can get to the other side, and that it's so worth it.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
So an analogy that I think about when I talk about the work I've done so far now, this is not in the book, by the way, but is, when you imagine being out in nature and you want to create a new path, this is no new analogy. I'm not the brain behind this analogy. Everybody, I'm sure, has heard it. But when you want to create a new path and you don't necessarily have trail cutter tools and things, you have to walk up and down that same path a bunch of times. And that's eventually wears down the path, and then it stays, the path stays, even if it doesn't, it gets maybe a little overgrown, but there's still the marking of that path. And that to me is the neuroplasticity. That's the work that we've done together, is, taking it slow, making sure that we're being intentional about where we're stopping and where we're stepping and how we're going in a way that makes sense through the felt sense of the body, not necessarily always makes sense intellectually or rationally or cognitively. And
it's a different kind of intelligence.
Yes, it is. And recently, I was having a little bit of anxiety recently, meaning like in the last 6 weeks. My anxiety has been high. I think part of that's Mercury being in retrograde and messing with my technology stuff. But anyway, but I had been out of practice of my every day, or, a couple times a week ritual. That's my homework outside of session, to sit down and just spend a little bit of time, doing some kind of reflection, self-care, whatever. And I did it one night, and it only took that 20 minutes for me to be able to feel in self again. And that is the path that we've laid. Even though I had neglected it for a while prior to my work, and even prior to probably the last year and a half, like when I really started writing the book, it took a lot more to get me back into self than a 20-minute self-guided journal writing / reflecting / meditation time. And that's the neuroplasticity behind the work.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Like when you're talking about digging the pathway, I'm thinking about neural pathways. And I just love that you just said that, because it's so real. That's the sustainability and the lasting effect of this work. You just see it come alive in your 3D reality. Even if you lose touch for a couple of weeks with the routine or the ritual, actually. And it's like it's just that much easier to tap into it, or you come into confrontation with a disappointment in your life, and it's not as detrimental as it used to be. You can get back on your feet a lot quicker.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're running out of time, so I want to ask, because you're both here together, therapist and client, I just want to ask, how are you able to do this together? It's not super traditional I've never interviewed a therapist and a client together, and it's probably not super traditional.
And neither one of us has ever done this before.
It's all new for all of us. So how are you able to manage the boundaries and doing this together right now?
We talked a lot about this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, we did a lot of checking in about this, about how what would the impact be on our work together. I'm just going to reiterate that this is unusual, that I've never had a client write a book about our work together before. And I think our intention together has always been not about us specifically, but about being able to share what's happened so that other people can benefit from it, because it's been so mind-blowingly effective and exciting. And I've never seen anybody have a recovery like this before. I've seen lots of recovery. I don't mean that to sound doomy. I've seen lots of recovery before, but for someone to be able to write a book and articulate it in this way, I guess we just both have this shared feeling of mission, so to speak, of
illuminating that process.
So that other people can benefit from it. And we did talk about the ethical, people are going to question this in terms of ethics, and we've just constantly talked about that back and forth with one another.
And didn't you call your ethics?
I did. We both checked in legally.
And I called my ethics board and checked in there, and I also just, to piggyback off of what Jennifer just shared in terms of, for me as a practitioner and as a client, I know that mental health stigma is one of the number one reasons people don't access care. And to be able to shed some light to maybe remove some of the shame-bound secrecy that goes on in a therapeutic relationship is a gift that I feel like I am willing to do and give to the world. And I see it as such a, because of that feeling of like, I feel like I've been given a gift to tell this story. And that benefit outweighs the harm of the relationship being damaged. And so looking at, the dual relationships or the, harmful beneficial relationships and all that in the ethical codes and this boundary setting, because we talk about it, because we're, checking in with experts outside of us, and because of wanting to move stigma out of the experience of mental health treatment. That's what made it okay for me.
And also, we'll be curious, right?
Yeah.
Like, so did this,
how did this impact our work together?
Yeah. We're going to, we're not going to ignore this and act like it hasn't.
Yeah.
We're going to be really curious and responsible and, continue that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think the 4.5 years of working together also, there's so much comfort level, and we've talked about this so much that I have confidence that we'll be able to face anything that feels like it might be, I don't know, infecting our work together in any way, that we can we'll be able to figure that out together.
Yeah.
And our work together. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I was going to say that is a therapeutic process in itself to go through these changes or these pathways in your relationship and coming together and talking about it and conflict resolution.
Yeah. And I think from a client perspective, it's also just so important to be able to be honest with your therapist when something doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. And I do that even when it's uncomfortable, if it is uncomfortable. And I'm always encouraging my friends who are in therapy, if you don't feel like, you're comfortable with something, then just say that. Like, your therapist should, is trained in how to handle that. And so,
and I also know when you're not.
Yeah. And she knows me well enough now that yes, exactly. She knows when I'm not telling her something that I should be. So I don't have any feeling of, pressure or social desire, that I want to have socially desirable responses so that she'll like me more or she'll, anyway. So I think that's important.
Kind of out the window, isn't it?
Yeah. That's important to say.
Awesome. With just a couple.
I'm sorry, Orit, do you have any discomfort that you want to ask us about? Like, are you thinking, did that answer your question?
Oh yeah. That definitely, I mean, I would say I'm more of an innovative dance therapist where, like, as you were speaking, what was my thought? That you were talking about the power of sharing this, outweighs the, the possible potential repercussions. And I just have some strong feelings about some outdated ethical codes where it's like, there's all this assumed power differential in the therapist client relationship, where that's absolutely real. It happens, but I don't approach it from that way. I feel I'm really resonate with your message, like, and as Christine Caldwell has said on this podcast in her book as well about body authority, like the client always has authority over their body. They always have a choice. I'm not the expert that they're just following. Like, it's such an equal relationship. And so I don't personally have any discomfort. I don't feel like, especially when you talk about it, it's like you clearly had a choice in participating in this interview and obviously writing. I'm sorry, Anna, the video says here, in participating in the interview, in writing the book, and so on. So, like, I have a clear sense of just witnessing this conversation with you that no one's used any power against you to be here.
Right.
But I believe that this could be a question coming up for people. So it's why I asked and why I put it out there.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And so that is just a couple of minutes left. And I if you have one sentence from each of you to say to somebody who is really suffering in silence, has really been holding in pain or their trauma for so long, what is one thing you'd say to them to help them really reach out and invest and commit themselves into getting the external support?
Can I start?
Yeah.
Because you'll probably say something more sensitive than I'm about to say. What I want to say about that is that people come when they're ready to come, and that this is to let people know that the help is there and that you can recover. But people don't put their foot through the therapy door until they're ready to. I have a lot of respect for the walls that are up there. They're for a really good reason. And if someone's not ready for the work yet, they're not ready for it. And I want to, just in terms of what you just said, I want people to really respect that they'll come to it when it's time to come to it. And there might be baby steps that have to be taken.
Yeah. And for me, I would say that when you are ready, because it did take me a long time to be ready, when you are ready, there is a huge community of us who are survivors and who are healers, and that you are not alone, and that your pain is not a burden, and that your struggle and your suffering is not a burden to the community of us that are here to support you through it.
Oh, beautiful. I want to ditto that.
Ditto.
It's so beautiful. We're here with open arms.
Yeah.
Oh, this was so powerful. And, you know, this interview alone and your book, Anna, and you sharing, you know, the way that you've worked together, Jennifer, like this whole thing could be something that helps someone really come forward and feel ready. So I want to thank you so much for, I'm sure your relationship will thrive off of this, but to risk to be here and share this with the world, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank
you for the opportunity.
Yeah, you're a wonderful interviewer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.